Hello, welcome again to Course in Miracles, and these are my remembering reflections. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. It was nasty. It took me out for like a whole week. It was incredibly horrible, but I'm much better now, so I just might have to clear my throat sometimes like that. Anyway, I wanted to begin this week's with reading Pathways of Light does a opening preparation at the beginning of all of their materials. And I think it's really good because it sets the tone and the mood for our call. So I'm just going to go ahead and read that. It kind of helps us sort of center and align and get in this space so that we can really hear what Course is saying and absorb what it's saying and that sort of thing. It sort of brings us to a state of balance, and receptivity. So let's begin. I dedicate this time to healing my mind and awakening to my true nature. I surrender to the source of love within me, and I let it guide my way. As I do this mind healing work, I am willing to be mindful of my thoughts without judgment. I am willing to look at how I view my life circumstances as helpful feedback where there is still a need to heal my mind. I am willing to take responsibility for letting go of limiting thoughts and beliefs that reflect separation and specialness. And I am willing to let go of judgments about myself and others and see the innocence beyond the circumstances and events. I am willing to quiet my mind and ask the Holy Spirit to take the lead. And I am willing to let go of tension. I soften and I imagine the Holy Spirit leading me into peace. My aware self leads me as I now focus on healing my mind as I go through this mind healing course. So we left off on page 49, and it was section 7 in the chapter that was called Creating versus the Self-Image. Chapter 3, the innocent perception. So about halfway down page 49, we begin. So this is talking about creating versus the self-image. So the first sentence opens up in paragraph 1 by saying, every system of thought must have a starting point, and it begins with either a making or a creating, a difference we have already discussed. And then it goes on to say, nothing made by a child of God is without power. So I highlighted that because I thought that was pretty important, that as we talk about what is creating versus what is a self-image. So creating is like, we were created in the eyes of God, we're his creation, and thus we create through love. But the self-image is sort of that's like our ego side, and that is what we've made up about ourselves and about our lives, so the stories we've told ourselves, that sort of thing. So it's the illusion part. So there's a part in here in paragraph 2 that does mention the word devil, which could like freak people out, but it just says here that it says paragraph 2, line 4, it says, the quote-unquote devil is a frightening concept because he seems to be extremely powerful and extremely active. He is perceived as a force in combat with God, battling him for possession of his creations, which creations are us. The devil deceives by lies and builds kingdoms in which everything is in direct opposition to God. Yet he attracts men rather than repels them, and they are willing to sell him their souls in return for gifts of no real worth. This makes absolutely no sense. Later in here, it talks about the devil again. If you skim down to paragraph 5 on page 50, it says, the mind can make the belief in separation very real and very fearful, and this belief is the devil. So there's no like actual devil being. It's saying that we've just made it up from the idea of separation. We became really fearful, and all of that just created this whole devil idea of like something to be afraid of, when really it's just the separation that we're fearful of. In here it talks about eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge, and it says it is a symbolic expression for usurping the ability for self-creating. This is the only sense in which God and his creations are not co-creators. The belief that they are is implicit in the self-concept, or the tendency of the self to make an image of itself. So this just basically goes on to say that that never happened. He would never make us choose knowledge over whatever. We are already perfect. So we made that all up. And it says knowledge cannot deceive, but perception can. So we know what is true, and we know that we are truth. And that's all that is true. It's just that we are love, we have everything, and all our needs are met. And it is the idea of like a serpent or the devil or whatever, which again is just fear tempting us into making up things and perceiving things that aren't really true or even there. So I made some notes on this section. So basically, who we truly are is creation. But the false identity would be the self-image, because that's the one that we made up, or the ego made. So there's two versions. There's either your true self or there's your self-image. So your true self, basically we're created in the likeness of God. We're eternal, we're loving, unchanging. We extend love naturally, which is what A Course in Miracles calls creation. Is just when we create, it's just us extending love outside of us. We're love inside and we're extending that outside. We're completely whole and safe. And then there's the other, which is the self-image, which is just the ego identity. And this is made up by us, and it's not created by God. We made it up. It's based all in fear. This is where we'll compare ourselves. We will believe in separation, and we are constantly trying to define ourselves, improve ourselves, protect the self, and we feel unstable because none of that really makes us feel whole, because it's not real. So we make up images of ourselves, which we then try to live up to or defend. That's where I wrote down our struggle comes in, and we become insecure. We have insecurities and judgments. This is the ego saying, this is who you are, and you need to maintain this person. But truth, or the true self, would tell you that you already am as God created you, perfect. There's nothing to defend and nothing to judge about or nothing to compare about, because you can't compare us because we're all the same. We're all one. I wrote identity with the self-image. Leads you to the pressure to perform, to prove yourself, to prove your image, to compare yourself to others, to experience fear, loss, failure. If you will, it's like wearing a mask. And if you identify with your true self, this leads you to rest in peace. You are certain of who you are. You stop trying to become something you're not. And you simply extend love everywhere you go and everything you do. Creating is an extension of love, which I mentioned, and the ego only creates illusions because it's just made up of your perceptions, which aren't true. Peace comes from letting go of the image and remembering what you truly are. So this was a great section, super short. It was only 6 paragraphs. And then next time we will start chapter 4, which is the illusions of the ego. So that's it for that. I just wanted to, because it was a short section, I wanted to talk a little bit about a documentary that I had just watched since I was ill on the couch. And it was called The Kindness Within, The Journey to Freedom. And it was by Leon, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Logo Thetis, I think. He was the one that did, he got in that yellow VW bug and he like drove all the way down from Alaska. And it was all about kindness, spreading kindness. Anyways, I was shocked when I came across this one, because this documentary he did was he was writing a suicide note, actually. He was suicidal, and he talked to his therapist, and he said, I feel this pull that I need to go find God, and proof that there's God. And so he set out on this last sort of ditch effort, and he went looking for how to find God. So he decided to go to India. And while he was there, he was talking to, I believe it was a girl who, the guru wasn't there. So she's like the next person in charge. So she was talking to him about, God is within you. She talked about, if you have a crack in you, that's where the pain and the light gets in. Some of the things I wrote were, pain can take you to great heights. And he sort of likened that to, the great height that he went to was the point of writing this suicide note. And then pain is the wound where the light enters. And I think we always talk about that too. When, sometimes it's when we're at our worst is when we, have nowhere to go but up, or that's when we call on the light because we're so desperate. We've reached our breaking point. So he just said, if you are unhappy, suicidal, or hurting, then there is some truth that you are not telling. So what lies am I telling myself? So what stories are you believing? And then you have to be really honest with yourself. And he asked, what am I pretending to not know? And then the last question is, and what is it costing me? So for me, when I thought about that, what am I pretending to not know? I think that's just when you go around through life and you forget that, that you're love and you're perfect and, we're all one and all those things. And what is it costing me? So if you liken this to A Course in Miracles, it would be believing all those things the ego tells us. And sometimes it tells you that you're not good enough, and that's a lie. And what is it costing you? It's costing your happiness and your freedom, and eventually maybe even your life. And those are all lies that the ego tells us and we believe, and then we try and continue to make them real. Anyway, he goes on, and I wrote, we have to be willing to feel the pain. So he looked back on his childhood to sort of like try and figure out where this all came from. And then he asked, for him, it was his belief that like these terrible things were happening in his life, I guess. And he was like, if there's a God, how can these terrible things happen? So he just kind of shut God off then, because he thought if God was there, he would never allow this to happen. But God isn't in this. This is an ego world that we created in separation. So of course, God isn't here because he's inside. Anyway, so he shut off from God, and then he tried to fill that void now with all kinds of external things, which was what the ego tells you too, like, you feel sad? Well, here, eat all of this food, or, addictions and things like that. So we start trying to fill it with that, or like we become obsessive with exercising. And anyway, you could be addicted to anything and try and fill a void in your life with like all kinds of outside things. And then he said that all we really want, all of us all over the world, is just unconditional love. So we just want someone to love us for who we are, no matter what. And then I wrote this in quotes: your experience of your life is determined by you. Only you. I wrote, pain is a teacher and we are all students. Find out who you really are. And you do this by just having many experiences. So I think we're here in life just to do things, try things, have all kinds of experiences in different situations. That's what we're here for. And then to remember to surrender to your soul. And remember that God is everywhere, or higher power, or whoever you believe in, universe, energy, whatever, it's everywhere. I say God. God is revealed to us all differently. So I don't think there's one right or wrong way. However or wherever you see God is good, as long as you're looking at it with love. And my final thing was, to find happiness, you need to reduce selfishness. And I think what he did was they told him, if you wanted to really see God, you should be of service, try being of service. So he did do that. And he really did feel closer to God when he was feeding people. In India, it's the Golden Temple, I think. And it's where they just feed people 24/7 and no one's turned away. And he just said to feel, you get in a place of gratitude and appreciation. And the more you stay in that, the more receptive you get to that. And he went from seeking to giving, which I thought was beautiful. And he just felt like, okay, God is love. And he said, you can become more beautiful than before when you were wounded. And then he ended with, what would you say to your little self? If you felt those ways or whatever, what kind of advice would you give your younger self? And it was just really powerful. So if you haven't seen that documentary, again, it's called The Kindness Within, The Journey to Freedom. Anyway, I thought that was very powerful and really interesting. You don't need to travel to India or the world. You can. Those are pretty beautiful experiences. He talked to many different people with various spiritual beliefs, and they all believed that actually all the religions kind of say the same thing, just like unconditional love, and that there is some sort of something that connects us all together. It was just really a beautiful message. So anyway, that's my thoughts for now. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. Still recovering from my cold. Anyway, that's it for this week. And I will see you all again next week or whenever. But until then, remember to rise gently and return to love. Okay, take care. Bye.